Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, my future chef friends. Welcome to this month's episode of Fresh for Kids. We are going to be making some delightfully sweet frozen treats today. I wanted to focus on yummy things that we can make with grapes because traditionally this is the time of year when they are in season and you can find really delicious specimens at your local farmer's market or the grocery store. But I didn't want the grapes to have all the fun by themselves, so we are going to be adding a couple other fruits in there too. We're actually going to make two recipes today. The first one is going to be, it's called a 5-minute grape sorbet. So the recipe that I did find for this called for green grapes. However, I am far more partial to black grapes. They're a little bit sweeter. I like the flavor a little more, so that's what I used. And for that, of course, you will need grapes. You will need lemon and a little bit of sugar or honey, whichever is your preference. The biggest thing with this recipe that you need to be prepared for is that you are going to be freezing the grapes before. That definitely takes longer than 5 minutes. You need to freeze the grapes for at least 4 hours so that they are the exact perfect consistency and they are frozen all the way through. So those grapes have been in the freezer since yesterday and they will be perfect for making our grape sorbet. It is very, very delicious. For our second recipe, we are going to be making triple fruit freeze pops. So for that, we are going to use kiwi for the first layer, blueberries for the second layer, and grapes with a little bit of grape juice for our third layer. Again, this is one of those recipes that's really more about a lengthy preparation phase than a lot of work being done when you're actually putting it together. So those are the food ingredients we will need. In addition to that, our hardware, so to speak, you will need a cutting board, a knife for chopping, a microplaner or a zester, whatever you would like to call it. We will need some cups and some popsicle sticks, unless of course you do have some popsicle molds, but if you don't, this is a super easy recipe that you can really just make with things that you probably already have at home in your pantry. So I will be showing you how to make them in paper cups with popsicle sticks, and we'll need just a little bit of foil to cover those up to keep that popsicle stick in place for our first layer. These are what are known as flips. Maybe somebody in your neighborhood makes them and sells them. I know there's a gal down the street from me that she sells them to the kids for like 25 cents a piece, and they're sticky and messy and delicious. So I will be right back, and we are going to start on that first layer of our triple fruit freeze, which is going to be our kiwi. So I'll be back in a flash to show you how we start that. We are back and we are ready to process the kiwi into a puree so that we can make our first layer for our triple fruit freeze. So I've got my sliced kiwi in the bowl of my food processor. I have a half a cup of water and we are going to add a tablespoon of sugar. Again, if you are more partial to honey or are restricting your refined sugar intake, you can use honey, you can use less sugar, you can use no sugar at all. It is entirely up to you. It is all a matter of personal preference. All right, so we've got kiwi, half a cup of water, a tablespoon of sugar. It makes the medicine go down. Just kidding. Okay, so we've got that in our food processor, so I'm gonna turn this on. It's gonna get really loud, and then I'll show you exactly what our puree should look like. That looks perfect. All right, so it's just going to be a very, very liquidy puree of kiwi that we are going to use. now I'm gonna set up my cups and my popsicle sticks and my foil, and I'll show you how to get this started. All right, triple fruit freeze part 1. So here's our kiwi puree. I've got my 8 cups out here. I did pour this into the measuring cup because it's a little bit easier to pour it without spilling with this because it's got the spout on it. So you just want to get an even amount into all your cups. I just start off with a little bit in each one, and then I add to it as I go along if I have extra at the end. So, and of course, if you have popsicle molds at home, this part is going to be a little bit easier for you. But if you don't, this is an easy way to make popsicles. And maybe you've got some fruit in your refrigerator right now that is, you know, on maybe its last day before it's not going to be good anymore. So this is a great recipe for kind of cleaning out your pantry. It's sort of the sweet version of making a soup with all of your leftover vegetables. So we're just going to take our square of foil, wrap it around the top, and just pinch the edges to make sure that it's on there nice and tight. And then, using my kitchen scissors, I'm just going to make a little hole right in the top. And then I'm going to take my popsicle stick. I'm using the wider, bigger, almost like tongue depressor sticks because these are going to be fairly heavy once we get all 3 layers in there. So it's just going to be a little bit sturdier than a traditional popsicle stick. But I'll tell you, at home, I did not have popsicle sticks. So my triple fruit freeze hack was to take, we have wooden skewers that we use on our grill. So I just took those and I bent them in half and used those so that it was doubled up and a little bit more sturdy. So you could also use plastic forks, like, you know, that you use for cookout. You could use those. Those would definitely work as well. So again, this is really a recipe that you could make from everything that you have at home. So we're just going to slide that in there, and then the foil is going to hold that stick perfectly in place until that first layer freezes. So I am going to continue this process with each of my cups. All right, so I'm going to finish up these other cups. I'm going to put them in the freezer to get them started. You want about 2 hours per layer to get them fully frozen. And the reason why we're doing it that way is because if we just poured them in when they were not already frozen, they would just mix together and you wouldn't have that clear definition of layers between your different fruits. And you definitely do not have to use the same fruits that I'm using today. You could use strawberries, you could use apples, you could use really just about any kind of fruit that you're into, although I would not suggest bananas. They really don't do well in a puree, and they brown, and even though they might taste okay, they're gonna look a little funky. So that's probably about the only fruit I wouldn't use for this particular recipe. But kind of all the other fruits are really up for grabs, other than those few savory fruits that we use for other recipes that aren't sweet, like olives or tomatoes or avocados, right? So I'm gonna get these in the freezer, and then I'm gonna pull out those frozen grapes, and we are gonna get started on our 5-minute sorbet. Be right back. We are back. My grapes are frozen. As far as like starting this process, of course, you want to rinse your grapes off very well, and you want to make sure that there aren't any stems left on them, and then you're going to just put them in an even layer on a cookie sheet and put them in your freezer. Like I said, at least 4 hours. Longer is not going to hurt anything at all. So once we have got them frozen, we are going to then put them into the bowl of our food processor. The original recipe called for 3 cups of grapes. Again, measurements are really not that big of a deal. It just depends on how much you've got to make or how many grapes you have on hand And you can again use any kind of grapes. There are so many different kinds of grapes. There are about 8,000 varieties of grapes. That's a lot of different kinds. And grapes have been cultivated for at least 8,000 years, perhaps even longer than that. Going back, different civilizations use them for different things. Wine, of course, being the most popular. However, some cultures use them for medicinal purposes. Way back in the day in China, they actually mixed grapes with frogs and snakes and various other creatures, and they were used for their medicinal purposes. I'm really glad I did not have to go see a doctor back then. All right, so we've got those in our food processor. Another tool that is definitely going to benefit you at this phase of the recipe is having a rubber scraper, because you're going to want to open this up and kind of make sure that they are getting processed or pureed evenly. So I am going to just be I'm going to turn it up to level 2, and I'm going to just do it on pulse. And the difference between your settings on most food processors, pulse means it's only going to spin around while you have your finger on the button, or you can turn it on to run, and it will stay on without you having to keep your finger there. I do like the pulse function because it really allows you to get it even. Sometimes when you just have it going, it's only processing the food that's in the bottom of the container and not getting the top level. So okay, so definitely this is a very, very messy thing to make. Just be prepared to have grape bits all over your counter. So again, we're going to be adding a little bit of both lime juice and lime zest, or lemon, sorry. Lemon juice and lemon zest. And the zest is just the skin, and it just has a very potent amount of that lemon flavor that will give you a little more hint of it than if you just use the juice. Now, again, if lemon is not your thing, maybe you do like lime, you could definitely use lime. You could use orange juice. You could just put a little bit of grape juice in there. I know the first couple of times we made this recipe at home, we had some leftover grapes and thought, let's make this recipe, and that way they don't go bad. We did not have really any kind of fresh fruit to add to it, so we just added a little bit of lemonade to it, and it was really delicious. So it calls for a teaspoon of lemon zest, and depending on the size of your lemon, that's about the skin of one lemon. And again, you could use more if you like it. I really, really like that zing of the lemon, so I for sure used a little bit more than a teaspoon in mine, but you can just really hold it right over top of your food processor and microplane that in there. Just be very careful if you're doing this, because it does not feel great if you accidentally scrape your knuckles across there. Take it from my experience, you don't want that to happen. And of course, like I said before, if you use more than 3 cups of grapes, maybe you want to make a bigger portion of this, because you're having, you know, a few people over and you want to really please them with your kitchen skills. You might use more than the 3 cups of grapes, and again, if you do, you'll just use a little bit more of both the zest and the juice. And with this microplaner, a lot of times it all sticks to the back, so you just want to take your rubber scraper and get all that good stuff into the bowl of your food processor. All right, so we've got that, and then with my knife, we're gonna cut our lemon in half, and I don't know if you noticed me rolling it on the counter, that just softens up the pulp on the inside and makes it much easier to squeeze the maximum amount of juice out of it. So I'm just gonna make sure I don't have any seeds right here at the top of my lemon half Definitely don't want any seeds in there. And again, the recipe calls for a teaspoon. Go with your heart. I like it a little bit more lemony, so I'm adding a little bit more than a teaspoon. All right, and again, you could use sugar. I'm gonna actually use honey for this. It calls for 2 tablespoons. That seems a little excessive to me. I'm just gonna use 1 tablespoon because really these grapes are quite sweet and I don't wanna add too much sweetness to this. Particularly if you have someone who's going to be enjoying your sorbet that really can't, have as much sugar. We have a couple people here in the library that their bodies have a little bit more of a difficult time processing sugar, so I try to be mindful of that and not add too much when I'm making things for people here. Okay, we've got it in there. We are ready to go. And it's going to puree very quickly now that we have that added bit of moisture. Oh, that looks so good. And it smells quite heavenly as well. And for the real test, here you go. You can see that. That is like the perfect consistency. You can smooth it out a little more if you like, but this is exactly the way I like it. Just, you can still see the grape skins and it's a little bit chunkier, but if you like it a little smoother, absolutely, you can process it a little longer. Oh, wow, that's really good. Again, you can use different fruit, different types of grapes. You could use grapes and other things in here. Maybe you would like to add strawberries to it. That is a wonderful flavor combination. However you do it, it is really going to be delicious. And here in Florida, although we are in fall technically, or going into fall, it still feels like summertime out there, and this is the perfect way to cool down with a very easy and good for you treat. So I'm gonna package this up so that I can share it with my coworkers. And when we come back, we will see how our first layer of our triple fruit freeze pops are doing, and we will get started on our second layer. We'll be back soon. And we are back. We are ready to put our second layer of fruit into the fruit processor so we can make a puree to add the second layer to our popsicles. The kiwi should be just about frozen at this point. So now we're gonna do blueberries. And I'm just using the entire little quart of berries. I've rinsed them, of course. We are also going to add a half a cup of water, just exactly like we did with the kiwi. And a tablespoon of sugar. A little bit less. I tasted one of the blueberries and these were quite sweet, so we're not gonna add a ton of sugar to it. And I definitely would recommend that you try the same thing. Some batches of really any kind of berry will be very sweet, and some might be a little bit more tart. So it's good to try that out first before you add a bunch of sugar and make it too sweet. And did you know that grapes are actually a type of berry? Now you know. All right, so we're just gonna zip this on and puree it, and then we are going to add it to our kiwi. That there aren't any big pieces, and it liquefies the skin of the blueberries a little bit. So I am going to pour that into this, and when I come back I will show you how we will top the kiwi with our blueberry puree. Be right back. We are back and we are ready to add our blueberries. So I have removed the foil, but I'm keeping it because we're going to recover them when we finish adding this. Now we are not going to pour the mix straight on top for a couple of reasons. One, if this isn't completely solidified, they will definitely join together and you will not have that perfect layer. The colors and the fruits will blend together. And another reason is since we've already got those sticks down in there, if we just pour this in willy-nilly, we're probably gonna get blueberry puree all over these sticks, and that will be rather messy. So we're gonna spoon it on top very gently. The best method for this I found is just to do a couple of spoons in each one and then go back and then fill in so everything is even. Okay. And of course, if there's a fruit that you like more than others, you can make one layer thicker, so you get more of a certain kind of fruit. And of course, if you are going for specific colors for your freeze pops, you could use fruit based on that. Say for instance you wanted something very vibrant red, you could use strawberries or cherries. So it's entirely up to you, and you know, it could just be about flavor combinations that you like together. And this of course is a little bit of a messy part. So much for not getting juice on the sticks, huh? All right. So I am going to continue filling all of these in. I'm going to then top them again with my foil. They've already got the holes, so I'll just pop that back on there and put them back in the freezer for another 2 hours until this has solidified. Then we will repeat the process with grapes. However, we will not be adding water to the grapes, we will be adding grape juice. And because we're doing that, we don't need to add any more sugar to it. Again, if you're using green grapes instead of the purple, you could certainly add a sparkling grape juice, something lighter in color if you really want that very, very light green color as one of your layers. Entirely up to you. So I'm going to finish this, and then we'll be back to add the grapes on top and see what they look like when they're finished. We are ready to add our very last layer of fruit puree into our cups here. This is the grape layer. I put it in the food processor, but instead of using water, I used half a cup of grape juice, which means you don't need to add any sugar to it at all. So I'm gonna spoon this grape puree on top of our kiwi and our blueberries, put it back into the freezer, and 3 hours later, we will have yummy, delicious triple fruit freeze pops. And through the magic of cooking television, I will show you what those look like in just a moment. So I hope that you have so much fun making your triple fruit freeze pops using whatever kind of fruit you love. So I'll be back in a moment through the magic of television to show you what a complete frozen triple freeze fruit pop looks like. Hello, we are back, and I am very excited to show you through the magic of television what a finished triple fruit freeze pop looks like when it's finished. So all you have to do once they are finished, 3 hours later, you are going to take that paper cup and just tear it, and it will come right off, and you will have this beautiful and delicious and good for you fruit pop. I am really excited to eat this. So like I said, even though we are going into fall, it kind of always feels a little bit like summertime here in Florida. So I hope you enjoy your fruit pops, whatever kind of fruit you decide to use. And we would love to see and hear all about your fruity creations. Have a wonderful rest of your month, and we will see you next time here on Fresh for Kids at the Maitland Public Library. Bye.